Well, the new political power of the church. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, some significant changes could be headed our way, which forever changes the culture of this country. We're talking about the Johnson Amendment, and IRS expert Dan Pilla is here to discuss the details. Dan, how are you?
I'm well, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing good. I've got to get some understanding on something, because it is my understanding you were just on Point of View on this station. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just want to ask you, which one do you like best, considering I have you on once a month?
Well, Bob, you and I have been doing radio together for, 30 years or more?
That number gets bigger every time you say that. I think it's like,
because we keep getting older. That's why every year that goes by, there's another year that we've been doing radio together. But
I'll give you 25 years.
I've been on Point of View for just about as long, starting in the late 1980s, Bob. I've been of course for 10, 12 years with Marlon Maddox, God rest his soul, and then with Kirby and Merrill Matthews ever since that time. So it's a family relationship, put it that way.
Well, with those credentials, I'll let it slide just this one time. But I do want to say in all seriousness that, and Dan's not going to like me saying this because she doesn't like to be bragged on, but I will say that Dan is the smartest guy in the room if you want to talk about the IRS. And he's on the program every month, gives of his time, gives of resources off of his website, taxhelponline.com, and very blessed to have him here, because we're talking about things that you're not hearing in other places, and some of the things we'll be talking about today may be a big surprise for you. Let's talk a little bit before we go into that. I've got to know something about you're not much of a I can't say the word.
Conspiracy
theorist.
I think is what you're looking for.
Yes, and that's the only time I'm going to have to say that. You're going to have to say that for me. But if you were, what would you say to this mix-up at the or what's going on with the heads of some of these big major parts of the government? Frank and Bisignano, as best I can, as it reads, who currently serves as...
In its Italian name, it's Bignano. Bignano is how you pronounce it.
All right, I'll give you that one as well. Who currently serves as Commissioner of the Social Security Administration, has also been appointed to the CEO of the IRS. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, will continue his role as acting IRS Commissioner. Man, bad optics, for one thing.
It's bizarre is what it is, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, and what's going on here is this. The IRS has gone through 7 commissioners
right.
since President Trump took office in, January 21st, I guess, of this year. Their commissioner who was ensconced at that point, Danny Werfel, obviously resigned because Trump made it clear that he wanted his own guy. Okay, fine. So Werfel stepped down. So then they went through a series of acting commissioners, and then they appointed Billy Long, former Congressman Billy Long from Missouri, got confirmed to the position in June. He wasn't there, I don't think, 3 weeks, and then he left the position, and they made it. The White House said, "Well, we're going to appoint him to an ambassadorship position." So Long is gone. Frankly, and you and I have talked about this in the past, I don't know why Long was the guy in the first place.
Yeah, right.
With tax law or administration, and certainly no experience in running a big government agency, either or any big agency, whether private or government. He's got no experience. So now what happened is, as you pointed out, Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary, I guess a month ago or so, took the position, maybe a little bit longer, that he's gonna be the acting commissioner while he is at the same time the Treasury Secretary. Well, now the Trump administration last week or earlier this week, I guess, stated that the commissioner of the Social Security Administration is going to be the quote CEO of the IRS. Well, the problem with that, Bob, is there is no such thing as a CEO of the IRS.
There is now.
They just made, well, exactly right. They just made that title up. They made it up a week ago, and they say that the Social Security Administration commissioner now is going to be running the day-to-day operations of the IRS. Well, that's what the commissioner is supposed to do. So why didn't they name him acting commissioner? I suppose it's even worse optics to have one commissioner running two agencies. But anyway, this is where we're at. We still have no commissioner. The Trump administration continues to tell us that they're going to nominate somebody to be the commissioner. Okay, fine, get on with it. I don't know what the holdup is. They haven't called me yet, Bob. I noticed that.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to get that call.
Every morning.
I don't think you're going to get that call.
Every morning to see if I got a call, missed call from the White House, but nope, no missed call. So here we sit. I mean, you're right. It's bad optics is a polite way to put it. It's a doggone disaster, really. It's not good. You got to have somebody there running the agency, especially given what the tasks are that they have to deal with over there.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. It looks like a power play, if you will. The way that they've handed out those seats.
Yeah, I just don't know what to make of it, and the fact of the matter is the White House is getting no cooperation whatsoever from the Democrats in the Senate. Every single nominee that the president has put forward, without exception, was voted, was approved on a party line vote, and it doesn't make any. And for example, Donald Korb was just confirmed by the Senate Finance Committee. Just approved by the Senate Finance Committee, so his approval will pass to the full Senate now for their vote on a party line vote, 13-12. Donald Korb is the president's nominee to be the IRS chief counsel attorney, right? The number one attorney working for the IRS. Korb has worked for the IRS for 30 years, 40 years maybe. He's been in all kinds of different positions at the IRS, including acting chief counsel, including top counsel positions within the IRS's attorney staff. He is eminently qualified to be the chief counsel of the IRS. Not one single Democrat voted for him.
Unbelievable. Well, let's talk a little bit about the IRS announced new federal income tax brackets for 2026. Anything jump off the pages at that announcement?
No. There's nothing unusual about that. That is consistent, Bob, with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That bill and those tax brackets that you see there, and I don't have them right in front of me here, but those brackets that you see there are consistent with what the brackets were when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed back in 2018. It took effect actually passed in 2017, took effect in 2018. That was Trump's original tax cut bill that provided tax cuts to the bottom 80% of income earners, right? So the vast majority of people in the middle class, the great middle class, got a tax cut under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that was continued with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and additions were placed in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that will further reduce tax liabilities for a lot of folks in the middle class.
And then finally, and this brings back shades of COVID, they said in the article that they would furlough nearly half the workforce due to the ongoing government shutdown. If this shutdown, and I think it's got a good potential of lasting for a while, gets to a point, I mean, we could be seeing the same, or let me ask it this way, could we be seeing the same problems that the IRS ran into during COVID?
Probably not. Now, this is the shutdown is not good news, certainly, and you're right. The Democrats in the Senate have dug in, and they're not likely to give up anytime soon. The last shutdown lasted 35 days. That was 2018 into 2019, like December 20th or something, whatever it was. It spilled into January of 2019. That was 35 days. This one could be as long or longer. It probably will not rise to the level of what happened during COVID. And the reason for that, Bob, is during COVID, the entirety of the IRS was shut down with the exception of a handful of people to keep their computer systems running and to keep security systems in place for their software so they couldn't be easily hacked. So what happened during that shutdown is there were almost 30 million tax return documents that were backlogged that didn't get processed because they were sitting in shipping containers in IRS parking lots, and there was another 20 or 30 million incoming correspondence from taxpayers that didn't get processed because of that shutdown. What's happening now, and I just read the IRS's contingency plan for government shutdowns. It's a document they released on Tuesday, I think, that took effect yesterday, and I just went through the document. So what they're doing is they're sending home about half the workforce. So what does that mean? Well, they got 75,000 people right now, plus or minus, a little north of 75,000 workers on the payroll right now, and about half of those people are going home. The other half are going to stay on the job, and they're going to focus on critical IRS functions. Obviously, data processing and data security is on the top of that list, but also programming the computers for the 2026 filing season, which is around the corner now, and processing incoming tax returns and tax payments. So we are not likely to see the backlog that we saw in 2020 because they have got a processing staff that is not going home. That will continue to work, and so we're gonna see a number of elements of the IRS continue to operate that completely shut down in 2020.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it, talking to IRS expert Dan Pilla. If you want more information on Dan, great website, www.taxhelponline.com. Okay, this is the story we wanted to talk about, and I remember the day that it happened, sending you an email just saying, is this for real? Because this was, in my opinion, was a very big story, but yet not much coverage, and still to today, people don't know a whole lot about what's going on with this. The Johnson Amendment, and talk a little bit just in general about what that is.
Yeah, exactly. The Johnson Amendment was an amendment to Code Section 501c3, that is the code section that exempts certain organizations from federal income tax, chiefly charitable, educational, and religious organizations. There's a long list of them, but those are the big three ones that are exempt from taxation under Section 501c3 of the tax code. Now, 501c3 of the tax code has been around a long time. In other words, churches and charitable organizations and so on have been exempt from federal income taxes really from the beginning, Bob, since the 16th Amendment was ratified and the 16th Amendment and the income tax took effect. That was in 1913. So all along they've been exempt. Well, here's what happened. In 1957, a guy named Lyndon Johnson, that might ring a bell with a lot of people. Lyndon Johnson was a senator, United States senator from Texas, and he proposed language to amend Section 501c3 that added a proscription for exempt organizations. In order for those organizations to continue to maintain their exempt status, they could not get actively involved in promoting or opposing candidates for public office, right? So they can't get specifically involved in political campaigns, nor could they get involved in promoting or opposing specific policy issues that are on the ballot. So essentially what that Johnson Amendment did is it closed the mouth of churches in general and pastors in particular from speaking out against public policy issues or in favor of policy issues or against a particular candidate or in favor of a particular candidate. In other words, it bought the silence of the church, Bob, when it comes to social issues debated in the public square under the guise of political issues. And so churches have been silent for all these years now. What is that, 60 years or so or more?
Long time.
In the context of these political issues. So, for example, when the abortion debate became a big deal, when the homosexual marriage became a big deal, now of course we've got the gender issues that are going on at such crazy levels. The churches have been unable to speak out against these things on the basis of biblical principles as applied to modern political issues. The church has been silent on those issues because of the Johnson Amendment. That's the background.
So talk a little bit about what brought this to the forefront and how things have changed and what's it look like?
Yeah, what it looks like is this. The debate has always been centered on the First Amendment. Why do churches have to give up their First Amendment right to enjoy the natural right to be tax exempt? That is to say that the government can't use the power of taxation to reduce or, in some cases, eliminate the economic wherewithal of a church. Right? We all know that the power to tax is the power to destroy, and the First Amendment creates that separation. That the government cannot impose its will on churches. It's not the other way around, by the way. Now, churches certainly have a First Amendment right to speak out, as anybody has a First Amendment right to speak out, and you don't lose that right just because you happen to be an exempt organization. So what happened recently here now, and you're right, this hasn't been covered by the mainstream media. It's only these esoteric tax news centers that are covering this stuff. But what has happened is the national religious broadcasters brought a lawsuit against the IRS, and it was joined by a couple of churches down there in Texas, I believe, is where the churches were located that joined the lawsuit. And they challenged the IRS in this lawsuit, claiming that the Johnson Amendment specifically violates churches and pastors' rights to speak out freely under the First Amendment, and that those rights cannot be hindered by legislation such as the Johnson Amendment that would shut their mouths. Okay, so what happened now is since the Trump administration took office and they're now running the Justice Department, right? The Justice Department has agreed to a consent decree, right, that would prevent the IRS from enforcing the Johnson Amendment against churches or pastors in the context, and this is important to understand the context, in the context of their ordinarily common religious activities from the pulpit. So, for example, if a pastor is giving a sermon on the biblical principles of same-sex marriage, and that pastor takes the position that the Bible opposes same-sex marriage, and that as a congregation we should support any political movement or political or candidate for public office that opposes same-sex marriage, under the agreement that would not be a violation of the Johnson Amendment.
So what do you? This has a lot of fine. It seems like has a lot of fine print to it, and it also seems like that churches don't even know this is. Is there a begin date on this or?
Well, the last time I checked, which wasn't that long ago, a week and a half maybe, the consent decree has not been entered yet. So in other words, we don't have a court order yet that applies this principle. But once there is a court order, I don't know if it's going to get broad coverage or not, Bob. I just don't know. There just aren't that many people that know about it. I've done, half a dozen interviews or more, maybe 10 interviews or so on this issue, and most people just don't know about it. They just don't. But once this thing is signed into effect, here's how it's going to come down. Pastors that are giving sermons to their congregation in the ordinary course of their pastoral duties, who talk about social issues of the day as measured against biblical standards, are not going to have a problem with the IRS challenging their exempt status. And to say it another way, that pastors have every right to speak out about biblical principles as they apply to modern social issues. Let me give you an example. All of the social sciences of the day, right? You take law, politics, history, economics, sociology, ethics, biology, psychology. All of these things, Bob, are your viewpoint, right? Your worldview, let's say, of all of these social sciences is affected by your theology, right? So if you come to the table with a Christian theology, you're going to look at law and politics one way. If you're going to come to the table with a Islamic theology, you're going to look at law, politics, and economics in some different way. And so what the First Amendment says is that you've got the right to freedom of speech, and that can't be hindered. That can't be hindered, as long as it's peaceful speech, right? That can't be hindered. And so just because you're speaking out on these social issues, law, politics, economics, history, these things, you have a right, particularly as a pastor in a church, you have a right to bring your theological viewpoint to bear on your analysis of those questions. And that's where we're at now with this lawsuit.
There's got to be a great amount of opposition against this. No
doubt.
What's happening on that front?
Yeah, no question about it. In fact, the lawsuit was by the national religious broadcasters against the Internal Revenue Service as to their enforcement of the Johnson Amendment, but there were a number of outside parties that intervened in the case, right? They became parties to the case. Interveners, a friend of the court. Think of it as a friend of the court, okay? And so there were a lot of them, and one of them was and I forget the exact name of this organization, but I believe it's the Americans for the Separation of Church and State. I believe that's the name of the organization. And this is a very left-leaning organization. They're typically aligned with the ACLU and those that ilk of thinker, right, left-leaning thinker, if not outright leftist, and they've intervened and they said, oh no, the Johnson Amendment is critical. We can't have churches interfering in elections, and how dare they use their resources to influence voters? Well, again, every social science issue is affected by your theology. And so if Christians are not speaking out on these social issues, who's going to be doing the speaking out? Well, it'd be the atheists, it'd be the Muslims, right? It'll be the folks whose worldview directly opposes Christianity.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you want more information on Dan, you can always go to a great website, which is taxhelponline.com, and get how many books are you at right now? 15?
I've written a total of 15 books, Bob. 14 of them on taxpayers' rights issues and problems resolution, and one book on Christian culture issues called Salt and Light: The Secret to Restoring America's Christian Culture. That book was released, 5 years ago or so, 4 years.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long.
Well, Dan, I got about a minute.
Man.
Yeah, it does, with or without you. Got a minute left. I'm just curious about something. If you get tax advice from ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, and it's wrong, has the IRS spoken about bad information like that? The AI was wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question. I'm in the process of producing a ethics seminar for attorneys and accountants on that very issue. And the answer is you've got an affirmative duty. Certainly as a tax professional, you've got an affirmative duty to double-check the resource. And I would say that you need to understand as a citizen that these AI platforms are very useful, but they make stuff up. And that's a fact. They call it hallucinating in the AI world.
Hallucinating.
And I've got, there's some remarkable cases on this stuff where attorneys have provided case authority to courts that didn't exist. That was just completely made up. So you got to be real careful about that. I think you got an affirmative duty to double check anything that you intend to rely on for tax advice.
www.taxhelponline.com is the site. Dan Pilla is the IRS expert, and always appreciative of you to come on the program, Dan. Good talking to you. This is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.